It's actually real. I cannot believe this, but we're playing Oblivion in 2025, and I have a confession. Although my channel, for anybody who's new here, focuses on Skyrim and Starfield, you may have thought of me as a big Bethesda super fanboy, which I kind of am. I never had an opportunity to play Oblivion or even Morrowind when I was younger. This is my first experience with Oblivion, and I wanted to kind of share some thoughts and impressions of the game as I play through it and see what this recreation of an old game feels like to somebody who's never had an opportunity to play the original. So, the tutorial by itself took me around about an hour to complete, not because it was hard or complicated, but as a Skyrim player predominantly, I'm used to that menu and that system and that way of doing things. This menu, the UI that we have going on here is so different to anything I have experienced before. It's really easy to use, but also incredibly complicated at the same time. It's fine once you're out of the tutorial and you know how things work, but like the pestle and mortar situation where you can make a potion, but it's not in its own little category. It kind of took me off guard. The leveling system, 3-4 hours into this, still makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, you get individual level ups, but there's no way to like upgrade your sword skills specifically. Then you can sleep in a bed and you can get different strength perks. Like, it's all very strange. And again, I'm coming from Skyrim and Starfield, where you can get an extra 10% damage every time you swing your sword or something, because you have the option to level those things up. And then the amount of stuff that you get throughout the tutorial, like weapons and armor and skulls and bones, like I don't know what I'm gonna need, so I just picked everything up and I got over encumbered halfway through the tutorial, which I suppose is a great thing because it shows that I'm interested in everything, but it's also annoying because like, oh, well, this is great, I have become a snail. Once you exit the tutorial, however, it feels like a completely different game. You're out of this really confined space, and that's another thing I noticed. There are so many similarities in the way that they did things with Oblivion, making you feel enclosed, going through this cave, learning the ropes, and then you're out into the open, and that's a really nice reoccurring feature that feels very reminiscent of what we already know, so I kind of knew what to expect going forward. What I didn't expect, though, is like walking to my next objective, and everything felt so big. Like, I assumed because this game came out before Skyrim, the world of Oblivion should feel smaller and more condensed, and there should be more things packed into a smaller area, but as I ran through the woods for like 10-15 minutes just to reach the next thing that I had to do, I was taken aback because I didn't expect this game that is nearly 20 years old to be this grand, for lack of a better word. Like, the world itself didn't feel empty necessarily because there's a bunch of POIs and things you could do along the way, but I don't think I was expecting this much cardio. That's a lot of running from one place to another. The story itself, like just from my little bit of experience with it, I'm nowhere near finishing the game. I've just reached the Oblivion Gates as I'm recording this now. It seems okay. I want to say it's a little bit like a diluted version of Skyrim, which makes sense. It's so hard making this little narration because I'm like, it is a new game. I'm comparing to a game that came out before it, but technically this one came before that. It seems like they took a bunch of notes from the original Oblivion game and then they amped it all up with Skyrim, and they added a bunch of different factors and lore and things like that, and they just made Skyrim this absolutely massive, beautiful story that all kind of culminates together. This feels like the starting blocks for that. Like, if you replaced the Oblivion and the Daedra elements for dragons, now naturally it's going to change and the story's going to deviate and whatever as we continue through the playthrough, but just the first couple of hours, it feels like a carbon copy of Skyrim with some words changed. I did really like the fact that the character customization and the leveling system and the gods that you worship and stuff like that, it all makes it feel like a more traditional RPG. Like I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, rather than a Bethesda game. Being able to pick from an assassin or a monk or a knight made it feel very different in that sense than any of the Bethesda games that I've played in the past. Something that did kind of catch me off guard were the gameplay elements. Like, looking at the trailers and the reveal for this, it's all about the visuals and how impressive it is. And don't get me wrong, it is a beautiful game, but when you actually get into the mechanics, you can kind of tell that it's a bit of an old game. Tiny things like the pathfinding for some of the enemies, it all feels a little bit robotic. Then the action and the running and the combat sequences and stuff like that, it all feels very basic. And I recognize that they have overhauled a lot of the systems, and you can tell that it's had a fresh coat of paint, and it doesn't feel exactly like a retro game, but it's got this really weird middle ground where it's reminiscent of what I assume the old game was, and it has those nostalgic elements, but it also feels fresh. And I think this is one of the coolest things about this game in particular, and this remaster, is the fact that it actually feels nostalgic but modern. I'm trying to explain this in a way that my vocabulary, although very limited, kind of allows. I like the idea that when we look back on games, in our minds, they are so much more vivid and incredible and all the rest of it. But then, let's say you go and play that nostalgic game again, it doesn't hit the same because the graphics aren't quite what you remember. The gameplay mechanics don't compare to what we have in modern games, but this has that really nice, sweet spot of merging the two together, giving you the visuals, the aesthetics of a modern game, exactly how you remember it, but also maintaining that original feel and the story and the lore that you may have fallen in love with all those years ago. An example of this would be Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. They recently did a remaster, and this is a game that I played back in the day, and then I jump into it now, the remastered version, and it feels kind of strange. It has a couple of elements that are new and unique, and the fresh paint is kind of there, but at the same time, it still feels retro. Whereas this, they've done a really good job at bringing it to a new audience while also keeping all of those original elements. But that's pretty much it. I feel like I've given my first impressions. I still need to go through and experience everything that this game has to offer. This is one of the most beloved games in the Elder Scrolls franchise, and I've heard that the DLC for this is meant to be the best that Bethesda has ever made, and I'm so excited to start experiencing that for the first time. But simply put, the game is pretty cool. I'm enjoying it, and I think that old folks like me, those who did play Oblivion back in the day or those that didn't, are going to enjoy this because it is everything that we have wanted from remasters over the past couple of years that we just haven't been able to nail. And from first impressions, I think that Bethesda and Virtuos did a fantastic job at making this come to life all over again. So stay tuned for a full review, and I'll probably make a couple of guides, tips, tricks, tutorials, and maybe cover some glitches if they're still in the game over the next couple of weeks. But for now, I'm going to continue with my playthrough, make some Starfield content. For those of you who don't know, I have an entire series based on Starfield creations. If you enjoyed that game, I know it's kind of controversial, I recommend checking some of those videos out because I feel like there are a lot of creations that make Starfield one of the best games that Bethesda has ever made. Anyway, I love your faces. You're amazing, you're beautiful, and I'll catch you in the next one.